Oh, gracious God, help us to become masters of ourselves so that we might become the servants of others. Take our minds and think with them. Take our lips and speak through them. Take our hands and work with them. And take our hearts and set them on fire with your Spirit. Amen. If you were to write the prologue to your life, and I'm thinking specifically, if you were to write the prologue for the coming year of your life, what would you say? What would it include? Now, a prologue is not about predicting your future or coming up with some kind of foolproof plan to face whatever comes your way. So to understand what a prologue does, we can turn to the prologue, this prologue from the fourth evangelist, because what these verses tell us is that what they do is they orient us. These verses actually, kind of set the tone. They provide a lens for how to see how the rest of the story will unfold. So this got me thinking, even if we don't know how this year will unfold, we can choose the lens through which we will see the events unfold. We can choose the lens which will anchor our lives, even with all the unknowns. It's about having an alignment. It's saying, it's not just, life isn't just some sort of random thing knocking me to and fro. It's a lens. We can choose a lens that provides a cohesiveness, a direction to our lives, that provides that framework, a framework that we see in this prologue from the Gospel of John. And so it seems to me, given the last couple years, it seems to me we could all benefit from a prologue for the coming year. It's so funny. When I was younger, I usually skipped over prologues in books, like, yeah, let's just get to the story. Now I appreciate the importance of the prologue. So if you were to write a prologue, what lens will orient your life this coming year? 525,600 minutes. How will you measure this year? What about love? In the case of John the Evangelist, this prologue is the realization that life can't be the same. This prologue says that, yes, and when life can't be the same, then some kind of determined, incarnated change of direction needs to happen. That's the framework provided for us in this prologue. There needs to be a concrete and flesh, change of direction when things can't stay the same. That's the lens that John provides. And that incarnated and fleshed concrete change is Jesus. In his book, God is Red, A Native View of Religion, Vinay Deloria says that whether you're a liberal or a conservative, all familiar Western political ideologies judge themselves and each other as history unfolds. They see things in terms of time and space. But what Deloria notes is that with Native people, they tend to see the world from a spatial viewpoint. So yes, there is a sense of time and history, but for Native people, that becomes subordinated to the present experience of the community in their place. Okay, so what does that look like? So what this is kind of a shift. So Jesus has not come to interrupt history, interrupt time, and set it on a new course that will unfold under God's careful and attentive presence. Instead, the important thing from a native perspective is that God came to live in Galilee. The Word became flesh and lived among us. You know, some translations say and dwelt among us. Actually, if you take the word, the best translation is pitched his tent. I love that. That's so concrete, isn't it? It's that the Word became flesh and the Word pitched its tent among us. So yes, with John, the Gospel of John, there is a grand cosmic vision of an unfolding history. That's not to deny that. And from a native perspective, Indian perspective, it's also important to realize that God's intention is to become like the stuff of the world and to live in specific moments in our world, in our communities, in our lives. So God's intention in this prologue of John is that God's story gets lived out in recognizable ways in the world. It's not some kind of esoteric, mysterious thing. You've got to climb a mountain to get a glimpse of it. It's not only over some cosmic saga, but God's intention is to engage in the specific places in our lives, and even in what we think are forgettable moments and interactions with our neighbors. God's intention is that God's presence becomes so unmistakable in our midst. It's unmistakable. And you know why? Because we, the faithful, put our bodies and not just our words into effect to make that true. God's intention in this prologue of the Gospel of John is that we then embody and flesh, pitch our tent. We embody God's justice and love in the world by living it out, just as Jesus did when the Word became flesh. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. We are to make God into flesh once again. To make God into flesh again in our communities, in our lives. Perhaps that's a lens for this coming year. And if so, then Howard Thurman's wonderful poem, The Work of Christmas, might just be a good accompaniment to your prologue for the coming year. When the song of angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flocks, the work of Christmas begins to find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among the people, to make music in the heart. 525,600 minutes. How will you measure this year? Amen.